Hey man, I'm Jusko from ProblemMoney.com, and in this video we are going to revisit the often asked question, how many credit cards should you have? How many credit cards is the right amount? How many credit cards is maybe too many? Now, because I know you don't want me to dilly-dally around, I will tell you right off the bat, I believe that 2 credit cards is the minimum number of credit cards that you should have. 4 to 6 credit cards is probably the sweet spot for most people. And in terms of there being an upper limit of how many credit cards, anywhere that you shouldn't go beyond, I don't think there is an upper limit, but there are some considerations which we will talk about as we go through the video. So let's look at each of those answers more closely and find out the why behind them. First off, 2 credit cards as a minimum. That suggests that you should have some credit cards. Having 0 credit cards is a bad idea as far as I'm concerned, and we'll get into that further later on in the video. But assuming that you should have credit cards, 2 is the minimum. The why behind it is pretty simple. You should have a backup to whatever that first credit card is that comes out of your wallet. It is certainly not unheard of for a credit card company to decline a purchase that you make, oftentimes for reasons that are not your fault. So it may not be that you are getting to your credit limit or anything like that, but it might be that the algorithms at the bank that issued your credit cards looks at the transaction and says this is too high compared to what this person usually buys with the credit card, or this purchase is much further from the usual places that they go to make purchases. Something is not liked, usually by a computer at a credit card company, and so you have a transaction declined. Now, yes, you can get on the phone and try and get somebody at the credit card company and hopefully get it all straightened out, but you'd rather have a second credit card and just say, here, try this one instead. So it is good to have a backup. So that suggests that if you are going to hold just that 2 credit card minimum, those credit cards should come from different credit card issuers, because if they were from the same issuer and you get declined on one card, you're probably going to get declined on the other. So, for example, if Chase were to turn you down for a transaction, you pull out your Capital One card, or vice versa, or whatever banks that you might choose. But you'd like to have 2 different banks issuing your credit cards. If you want to stick to that 2 credit card minimum, a couple other considerations. One of those cards should be a MasterCard or Visa. American Express and Discover, pretty widely accepted, especially in the US, but there are going to be some cases where they are not accepted, and if you go outside of the US, there are going to be even more places where they are not accepted. If you do travel outside of the United States, you're also going to want to have one of those cards be one that has no extra foreign transaction fees. So a lot of credit cards will charge you an extra 3% on purchases made outside of the United States. You want to have one of your cards be one that is not going to charge you that. Now, I said that for most people, 4 to 6 credit cards is probably more the sweet spot in terms of what you are going to want to have. So let's look a little further at that. Actually, before we do that, I should say all of this that we are talking about in this video is predicated on the idea that you are paying off your credit cards in full every month, because if you are going to be getting multiple credit cards and getting more and more credit limits on these credit cards, and you are running those up, getting yourself into debt, all of those bad things that can happen with a credit card, well, then maybe you shouldn't have any credit cards at all. So all of these discussions are with the idea that you are paying off these credit cards in full, getting the rewards from them, getting the convenience, all of the good things without the bad things. Now, I say 4 to 6 credit cards is a sweet spot for most people, because that is the area where you're going to be able to maximize rewards, maybe combine the good things of having more than one credit card from the same credit card issuer. It's not too many credit cards where you feel like you can't handle them anymore. It is sort of the just right Goldilocks place for most people. So let's look at some examples to drive that point home. If you are a frequent Amazon shopper, especially if you are a Prime member, you're probably going to want the Amazon Prime Visa. That's going to give you a 5% reward on your Amazon and Whole Foods purchases. If you are a frequent Target customer, good chance that you would want the Target Red Card. That's going to give you a 5% discount on all of your Target purchases. If you are someone that does a lot of purchasing in certain shopping categories, you might look out there on the credit card landscape and see that there are certain cards that are going to give you 4 or 5% on things like gas or groceries or restaurants, etc. So you might consider adding a card if you want to maximize a certain category. In addition, if you are someone that sees that having multiple cards from someone like Chase with their Ultimate Rewards program, maybe you have the Chase Sapphire Preferred and you see that adding the Chase Freedom Flex would be a good thing for you also because you can combine those points and even get more value out of them in certain instances, well then you're going to want to add an extra credit card there as well. So if we say 2 credit cards as a minimum, yeah, that makes sense, but in many, many cases, you're going to want to have at least 2 or 3 more to really feel like you're getting the most out of your credit card lineup. So if 4 to 6 credit cards is the sweet spot, does that mean that having 7 or more credit cards is somehow bad? Is there a place where you have too many credit cards? Well, the answer is that there's no defined upper limit where you're somehow going to hurt yourself if you have too many credit cards. However, there are some things that you should consider. First off is your credit score. Now, some people have the mistaken belief that having a lot of credit cards by definition is going to hurt their credit score, and that is not true. If you have a lot of credit cards, but you've gotten them over a kind of lengthy period of time and you've always made your payments on time, you're actually going to be helping your credit score. The place where you hurt yourself is when you get a lot of credit cards in a short time, especially if you don't have much of a credit history, because every application and every new credit card account that gets opened up is going to hurt your credit score a little bit, at least in the short term. So if you don't have much of a credit history, you're going to take all those hits, and they're actually going to be even a little bit bigger of hits than somebody that has a more established credit history. So if you want an auto loan in the near future or a mortgage in the near future, and you've gotten all these credit cards that have dinged your credit score over and over again, you could find yourself getting worse interest rates or getting declined altogether. If you don't have any loans or anything like that in the near future that you're going after, that doesn't necessarily hurt you that much, because over time, again, if you make your payments on time, you have the credit history that is getting older and older, and then your credit score will go up. It is really more of a short-term concern. Some other considerations: income. If you have a high income, you can sort of support more credit cards being opened than if you have a lower income, because what is going to happen is that over time, if your income is lower and you continue to open credit card accounts, your credit card limits are going to get smaller and smaller, because the credit card issuers are going to look at what you already have open, look at what your income is, and they're going to decide on your credit limit for that newest credit card based on all of that information. So you're going to see those limits go down, 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 down. If you have a higher income, you can open more credit cards because of the fact that you can still get those limits because your income supports it. Sort of hand in hand is the idea of how much do you actually spend on your credit cards. If you don't spend very much on your credit cards, you probably shouldn't have too many of them, because even if you're trying to maximize rewards in certain categories, what you're actually going to get in terms of real dollars is not going to make a whole lot of difference, and you're just going to have to administer a whole lot of different credit cards. If you have more money going onto your credit cards each month, well then it might make sense to have more credit cards, because then you can earn more in rewards in real dollars when you get a little bit more in each purchasing category, or if you have the opportunity to get new cardholder bonuses and you can actually meet the spend necessary to get those, well, that can make sense too. How many credit card accounts can you keep track of? How many credit card accounts do you want to keep track of? Those are obviously considerations. If you wanted sort of no muss, no fuss, well then keep yourself on the lower end. If you're someone that is fine juggling those many accounts, then having more than 6, not a big deal. The next consideration is issuer limits. Some of the credit card issuers do not want you to have too many of their credit cards, or they don't want to accept you for a new credit card if you've gotten too many credit cards from anyone in the recent past. Probably the most famous or infamous of these is the Chase 524 rule, which says that if you have gotten 5 new credit card accounts opened in the last 24 months, Chase is automatically going to decline you for any new credit card you might want from them. Other issuers have similar rules that could also mean you're going to automatically get declined if you're someone that really is going through a lot of credit cards in a short time. So even if you want to have a lot of credit cards, it makes sense to space them out. The rule I always say is that you probably shouldn't get more than 1 every 6 months, because if you do that, you're not going to hurt your credit score, and then you're also not going to run into those issuer limits generally. And it also usually puts you in a better place, because if you get too many credit cards too fast, you are going to find that in the future you see a bonus that you want on a new credit card, or some new credit card comes out of the market and you'd really like to have it, but you can't because you've gone too hog wild getting credit cards in the past. So those are some good rules of thumb when it comes to how many credit cards you should have. Now, I do want to get back to the idea of having 0 credit cards because some financial experts would tell you that that is the way to go. I think that's a bad idea, and that is for a number of reasons. Number one is the fact that credit cards are the easiest way for you to establish a credit history, build up your credit score so that when you want an auto loan or you want a mortgage, you're more likely to get better rates, more likely to get approved for those loans. So you build up your credit score, you can save yourself a ton in interest when it comes to getting those bigger loans that you are going to have to pay some interest on. Now, this of course assumes that you're going to make all your payments on time with your credit cards, handle things the right way so that you build up that credit score. But it's the easiest way for you to get yourself up to those higher credit scores, get the better rates. Number two is the idea of credit versus debit. Some people think, well, I'll just make all my purchases with a debit card and it's not going to get me into debt and that is going to, help me stay on top of my finances, which makes some sense. But the thing about credit cards is they offer you more protection on your purchases because when you make a purchase with a credit card, it is not coming straight out of your wallet. It's coming out of the wallet of the credit card company and then you're paying them back, which means there's a third party involved in that transaction. When you make a purchase with a debit card, the money comes straight out of your bank account. Now, there are some protections with debit cards, but oftentimes the bank is going to have some sort of lag time in terms of restitution if you have a problem with a merchant that you pay with or somehow someone gets access to your debit card. Now, there is one instance in which I would say having 0 credit cards is the way to go, and that is if you have had credit cards in the past and you found out that they didn't work so well for you. Maybe you had a credit card and that meant that you were spending a lot more than you wanted to. Maybe you had a credit card and you found out that you were spending way more than you could even pay back and you got yourself into some trouble with debt. Obviously, your financial health is more important than your credit score or anything of that nature. So if you've already found out that credit cards are not a good match for you, well then obviously having them might not be the way to go. So that's it for this video. Would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments section below. Otherwise, I thank you for watching, and as always, please go to proudmoney.com where we do credit card reviews. We talk personal finance, we talk deals, and all sorts of other fun stuff too. If you are not going to go to the website or you're not going to leave a comment below, the next video for you to watch is right there.